No high-profile politician or NGO has seriously made the case for reparations from China and the World Health Organization to the UK for the £400 billion and counting economic catastrophe they unleashed on the UK these past 3 years, thanks to the likely lab leak of COVID-19 and the despicable cover-up that followed. But instead, we're meant to sit idly by, smiling and nodding, as the international community, encouraged by hard-left Britain-hating goons like Red Ed Miliband, suggests the UK owes £1 trillion in reparations for the Industrial Revolution.
Loss and damage needs to be part of the core agenda of COP27. It is the duty and responsibility of Global North to understand our difficulties and our plight.
Whereas we acknowledge and are thankful that, all parties would have eventually coalesced around the fact that loss and damage is absolutely required.
And we expect the largest emitters to take responsibility and to do their part in loss and damage and mitigation and adaptation.
Wealthy nations like the UK and Ireland stepping up on their climate finance commitments to help low-income countries that are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis.
Just to be clear, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but to be clear, a Labour
absolutely,
government
it's about
would
supporting
give that
poorer
money.
countries. Completely right. And let me just say, it's morally right, Laura, but it's also in our self-interest too.
Those calls are insane and offensive. Above anything else, the rest of the world should be thanking Britain for the Industrial Revolution, which ushered in a raft of technological developments from transport to modern medicine that have actually caused life expectancy to soar across the globe, including in the developing world. But it's also not backed up by the reality of why we are currently facing what the deranged net zero extremists call the climate emergency. So here's the fact check of all fact checks. China is behind more pollution in just 8 years than the UK was since the Industrial Revolution, with the communist state responsible for 80 billion tonnes of carbon emissions from just 2013 to 2020, compared to Britain's 78 billion tonnes over the past 220 years. Meanwhile, we have reduced our emissions faster than any G7 country, a whopping 45% between 1990 and 2019, and are now responsible for under 1% of the world's CO2. But the liberal guilt of the West over the past 2 years, encouraged by woke movements like BLM, means previously sane politicians, including those within the Conservative Party, are starting to buy into such spurious and damaging arguments. Assad Rayman of War on Want told the Daily Mail today that paying reparations of 1,000 billions or 1,000,000 millions was the right thing to do. He said the UK was able to industrialise and take resources from the rest of the world and power its economy by burning fossil fuels. This is plainly morally the right thing to do. The UK should step up and accept the responsibility. And I mean, even Rishi Sunak at COP27 didn't back away from splashing the cash while the UK faces an unprecedented cost of living crisis set to see taxes soar and spending slashed.
The pandemic all but broke the global economy. And before coming here today, I spent last week working on the difficult decisions needed to ensure confidence and economic stability in my own country. But I can tell you today that the United Kingdom is delivering on our commitment of £11.6 billion. And as part of this, we will now triple our funding on adaptation to £1.5 billion by 2025.
But things could be about to get much worse. I have no doubt that with Labour in power, we'll still be signing over billion-quid cheques on a regular basis in climate reparations to assuage the white saviour complex folk like Miliband and take-the-knee Starmer seem to luxuriate in. The time has come for this Conservative government, led by Sunak, to stop pandering to this madness. China claims to be a developing country, but is responsible for 14% of all emissions in history, while we caused just 4.6%, with 80% of those before 1990. We must fight back against the Britain-hating rhetoric before a Labour government commits to a hellish cycle of reparations, dooming us to poverty as a country forevermore.